Hey guys, Darren Carr here, coach of Wise Ocean Pods, and welcome back to another episode about AFL Fantasy. On today's episode, we will be previewing the round 2 that will be happening on the weekend. Essentially, just discussing some of the popular trade-in targets that you should be considering for your side, and along with the popular trade-out targets that you most likely have in your side. I'll also be talking about my trade-in targets for my team and who I'm trading in and out. Trying to give you the best indication about what I'm doing. Not quite sure yet, as it's only Wednesday night. Teams haven't been announced yet, but trying to give you the best idea of what I'm doing. Along with, I'll be giving you my captain options for this week, as this will be the last time you see a video from me for the week until next week. So, without further ado, let's sort of get into today's episode. So we're here on the AFL Fantasy website. All I've done is gone to Stats Center, and I've changed the thing here to go Coach's Choice, and this shows us what all the coaches are doing for this round. So I've selected most traded out, and you can see that, who's traded out most people for this week. So I guess we'll just go through list by list and just talk about the main guys and go from there. So Brodie Grundy obviously was the talk of town this week. Scored the 53 on the weekend, which was really disappointing. Came up against the two ruckmen in Cameron and Cox. He's an interesting one for me because a lot of people are jumping off him and going straight to a Cherry to do that bit of a cash grab. But in my opinion, I still see Grundy and Cherry scoring very equally throughout the season. So I don't see too much of a benefit there. I know he has stulted his catch generation. Now he has a break even of 85. But it's definitely achievable and can start to generate that cash again if he, has a good game, which you sort of would expect in the coming at least 3 games, where before his bye he's got Essendon, then I think he has Tigers and then West Coast, who are easier matchups as well. So I'm backing him in, but I can see the reason why people are jumping off him to get that cash gen, especially with Cherry not having the early buy as well. Definitely showed a good ceiling of 125 or 21 as well. So, but yeah, that's just my opinion. If he's your only issue on field, for sure, go ahead, do it. If he can also use the money that you're taking from Grundy to facilitate another move, absolutely get it done. So can support that move. Just move on to Ollie Wines. Obviously really disappointing with the 72. Was the 4th midfielder for Port on the weekend, which was really disappointing considering all preseason he's going to be the number 1 guy. So I can definitely see why people are jumping off of him. Only thing I want to say with this is that his time on ground was quite low. I think it was closer to 70%, which is low for him. I think he's usually around that 80 guy. So I think it could have just been a bit of management in my eyes, because they were playing West Coast and they had already kind of sealed the game quite early on. So they could have been just building him into it. You could actually probably look at it for another week. You've got Tigers this week, who should be a bit of a better matchup for them, but still also giving points up for midfielders. But yeah, I can see why people are jumping off. He's the perfect sort of price at the moment. He's got a higher break even. He can jump to sort of a crouch up, or he can go down to a Bono and use that extra cash elsewhere. There's plenty of guys in there that are going to jump up in cash. So yeah, definitely a good option if you are jumping off. Josh Gibkiss, don't really need to talk too much about it. He obviously had the ACL injury. He'll be out for the season, so definitely jump off. I'll just be interested to see who people are jumping to in that line, because we don't have too many rookie defenders. Jai Newcomb, I'm in the very similar boat with Jai. Scored the 62. Was very disappointing on the weekend after what was a strong preseason. Thought he would have a bigger breakout this year and just looked really disappointing. So I can see why people are jumping off of him. He's got a huge break even of 122, so he's going to have a big monster of a game to not lose cash. So definitely consider moving off him. He's priced at 800, so he's sort of an awkward price in my opinion, because you could probably drop him down to a Crouch or a Bonner, but then you've got 300k that you can put on top of someone's head to maybe make an upgrade elsewhere, but maybe not quite enough to get sort of that top line guy, which makes it a little bit awkward. But yeah, definitely a strong case to push him out. But in saying that, if you're comfortable with him and you have a lot of confidence in him that he can still do what we sort of expected in the preseason, yeah, I do expect him to be a lot better this week with a more contested game against Melbourne. And I'd imagine that Sam Mitchell has gotten into Hawthorn after losing the clearance count quite badly against Essendon. So definitely can see a world where you back him in if you're confident. But in my team, he is one of the main guys that is my priority move on, as he's lost the most cash. So I'm definitely moving him on, I believe. Zach Reid, very similar to Gibcus, he had that hamstring injury, has been ruled out for 4 to 6 weeks now, so I don't see him coming back anytime soon, especially with Ridley on the mend as well. He could have taken that spot again, so definitely one you could consider trading out. Again, it's just who are you trading it out to. Yeah, definitely look at moving him out, especially because you want to make cash all over your field, right? So having him just sitting there not making cash is quite a negative thing. And if you can get him up to say a Hoare or a D'Ambrosio or a Caulfield, if you didn't start with Caulfield, yeah, definitely an option there. But you're spending up on your bench, which is not something we typically want to do, especially this time of year. So definitely, but what I'm thinking I'm going to do, just to put my opinion in there, I think I'm happy to let him sit there for a few weeks until a rookie defender puts up their hand. I don't think it'll be too many weeks before we have one that just pops up and we can just do that easily flick. He does have a bit of money on his head as well, so that does help his case. But yeah, that's all I want to say. Zach Fisher, I think people are being a bit harsh with the trade out. He did match his break even, went down the 1k, was on target for like a 90 at half time, just had a poor second half. I definitely want to see it for one more week. I do still see him scoring, anywhere between 80 and 90 and averaging that for the season. Just had a poorer game against a tougher opponent in GWS. So, yeah. But if he's your only priority and you don't have any other issues in your team, which it would be hard to imagine, I could see you probably jumping to, a Billings or a Fife or something like that around that area, even a Perkins if you're really that keen. But yeah, James Sicily, definitely one jump off. Scored the 30, has a massive break even now, so he's going to lose a bunch of cash. Did have the successful tribunal case, but is free to play. But yeah, I think he's still going to be a cannibal defender and is going to lose a bunch of cash. So definitely jump off. Plenty of guys around that area you can jump onto and use that cash. So yeah, go ahead. Nick Caulfield is an interesting one again. I think a lot of this is rage trading. Had the 44, was a bit disappointing compared to what we sort of expected around that 60 mark. Didn't lose cash, like I said, he earned 3k and now he's at a break even of 41. So there's every chance that he absolutely goes back to a 60 guy this week and makes clean. I want to see it for one more week, and I do think we get a free hit this week with a best 18. So happy to throw him at sort of that D5, D6 area, and if he has another poor score, then he can just be traded next week. I've sort of got him in my plans there. But yeah, definitely not an urgent trade out in my opinion. Similar to Connor Buderick, I know he had the 25 last week, but he does have the Bulldogs this week at Mars Stadium, so I could definitely see a world where these Suns defenders absolutely rack it up back there, and he can get that 88 that he got the week prior. So yeah, I struggled to take this 25 into account considering how sloppy that game was. It was absolutely torrential, so did not suit him at all. So if you started with him, you should have faith that he will improve this week. And this is probably a game that you had bookmarked that he's going to do quite well in. So, and he could definitely put his cash gen right back on track after this game. So, I'd be backing him in if it was in my team. Dry Clark, I can see why people are doing it. He had 32 and now he only has a break even of 25. So did make a bit of coin, but he's probably one of the only guys on our bench that isn't making a bit of money. So he's sort of making way to get sort of that Dempsey or a Sharp sort of rookie who's definitely going to jump up and cash quite quickly. But only caveat I want to say with that is watch for teams. If he is still named on the field or in the best 22, then consider other options because he can score. We saw it in the preseason where he was scoring 60s to 70s in the right role. Just, don't count him out after one game. I'm sure there's other options as well. But every chance that he could also be the sub. He did play a very low time on ground. Zach Williams, I don't know why people are trading him out. I know he has the buy, but he still has so much cash to make. So only went up to 44k so far. Expect him to sort of jump up to that 600k range quite easily, if not even 650. So I'd definitely be holding on to there just because he's missing this week. I think you have other options in a House or Caulfield or a Hoare that can come on field for you and be a fieldable option. George Hewitt, definitely can jump off. He's not doing what you sort of expected him to do at the start of the season. Has jumped up in price from last week, but did have that poor score of 96 on the weekend. Not 96, 69. Has a bit of a higher break even now and just doesn't look like the George Hewitt that we sort of expected while Sam Walsh is out. So, and he's quite unique, so it can hurt if you have him on field and he is doing quite poorly. Couple more here. So Bontempelli, I am in the opinion that if you've paid up for Bontempelli at the start of the year, you just hold him. He didn't have a bad game. Yes, he scored a 90, but he only had a bad quarter. He had a 6-point quarter in the third, and I think like an 18-point quarter in the fourth. So definitely a little bit unders for what he sort of was expecting. He was on track for 120. Definitely expecting to bounce back this week. He is playing at Mars against the Suns, so it could be, I don't know, it could go any which way, but he does have a decent track record there. I think he scored a 117 and like an 89 last year at Mars, so expect it to be somewhere around there. He's just going to be a guy that we can hold for the year. He's going to pop up for a couple 140s and a couple 130s across the year, and you can comfortably be happier with that and even it out. Cam McKenzie, I can see why people are moving him on. Was pretty poor, and I wouldn't be surprised if he is dropped this week, just with Hawthorn maybe changing a few things up and getting some of the younger guys in there as well. He is young, but just didn't perform, and I think they have enough depth to throw people around. Definitely would be looking to trade him up to, like a Fife or a Jordan. Has a higher break even now, so is definitely going to lose cash, unfortunately. Elliot Yeo, he's a very similar field thing to like a Williams or a Caulfield, in my opinion. Scored his break even, so he only went down the 1k. It was against Port Adelaide is the only thing I want to say. So he was the second highest scorer for West Coast, but are West Coast going to be a lower scoring team? There's definitely a possibility. They are at the bottom of the ladder and they don't seem to get their hands on the ball as often. Was the third highest CBA taker. I think it was behind, what's his name? Duggan and Kelly? No, not Kelly. Reed. I think it was Reed as well. I think Kelly actually got pushed forward a little bit, which was interesting. But definitely one I'll probably want to see for another week against a bit more of a contested component against GWS. So we'll see how we go. But again, if he facilitates a trade that you're looking at doing, maybe like a sideways trade to downgrade him to a D'Ambrosio, and then that can get you to someone in your midfield up a bit higher, then I could absolutely see that, and that could definitely work for you. as he's not going to make a huge amount of cash in a quick amount of time. I think it's going to be a bit more of a slower burn at this point in time. Jordan Dawson, again, similar to Bont. You paid up for him at the start of the season. I think you just hold him. I can't take that game into account against the Suns on the weekend. It was very poor, so his role was perfectly fine. Wouldn't have too many concerns there. So I'd actually hold him. Sardis is an interesting one. Obviously started as a sub, scored the 43. But yeah, watch teams. If he's named on field, then absolutely keep him. He could definitely push a 70 to an 80 if he plays that wing role the entire game. Just was unlucky to start as a sub. Similar manner, watch for teams. If he is named on the best 22, then he's an absolute lock to come into most people's sides. I reckon he has shown the scoring potential. I think he only played one quarter and scored 23. So, simple maths, that's a 90 in most days, but don't expect that. Can definitely wait a week on him if you want to trade him in, but I wouldn't be trading him out at this point in time unless it's obvious that he is going to be the sub again. Couple more here. Lazaro, I can see what people are doing, maybe just to facilitate a couple more, bringing in other rookies, and I'm not really sure what his role is going to be with Simpkin out, but I'm in the belief that Tom Powell is the one that usually gets pushed out of the CBAs with Simpkin coming back in, so I'm not really too concerned here, and he's definitely going to make a bit more cash with a break-in of 22 if he can keep scoring those 50s to 70s sort of thing, which he has shown he can do. So definitely want to see him one more week. I'm not considering trading that at all. Last one to probably talk about is just George Wardlaw, who ended up scoring the 66 on the weekend. Was a little bit disappointing in the long run, but was looking really solid in the first half, where I think he was on like 45 points at halftime. I think he just got managed quite late in that game. Only had the 72% time on ground. I also want to say that this game really didn't suit him in terms of his game style. He's more of a contested beast. He likes to tackle. Only had the 3 tackles, so when he comes up against a bit more of a contested opponent, which Freo should be, he should easily double that, and if not push it closer to the double digits. So definitely one I'd be considering holding. He's not gonna. It'd be very unlikely that he's gonna drop in cash. I definitely think he can easily break that playing a full game. So, yeah, I'm not too concerned there. But like every other team, if he's the only thing that is wrong about your team, absolutely. Obviously, this all depends on what your team looks like. But let's move on to the most trade-in players. I don't think I wanted to talk to you about any more about that. Actually, Carl Amon here just because he's in my favourites and I was highly considering him, and I know a few people that have him. I wouldn't be trading him out. I know he has the high break even of 99 and only scored the 80, but we've got to take into consideration the game style that was on the weekend, and that Essendon only kicked the 4 behinds. So he really didn't get any kick-ins at all, which he's normally at least a 4 or 5 sort of guy that kicks in. So that's possibly 10 points that he was under. So if he can push that back to a 90, then I think you got to be pretty happy with that. He's going to have games where he pops up and has a 120, if not a 140. So I'd definitely be pushing him, be holding on to him and backing him in, as we know what he can do. And his role doesn't look like it's going to be changing at any point. So that's all I done. So I've already spent 19 minutes talking about the trade out targets. Let's try and go through the trade in targets quite quickly. So Tristan Cherry obviously went ham over the weekend against a decent ruckman in a Briggs and scored the 121, and is absolutely set to jump up in price a lot. I can see why most people are jumping off from Grundy to him, and it's a good move if you're looking just to get that quick cash gen. My only question for this trade is, you're going to have to trade him out at some stage once he's made a bit of money to a top guy. So you're now wasting 2 trades, not just the one. So, yeah, in my opinion, I still see them 2 scoring very similar, as I said before. But, yeah, definitely if Grundy is your only issue on your field and you think Cherry is going to push it to the likes of 100, if not 100 plus, then absolutely jump on. He's going to make a bunch of cash quite quickly. I can see that easily jumping up to the sort of that 800, 850 mark. So yeah, definitely one that's jump onto if you're keen. Massimo D'Ambrosio looked really good on the weekend. Scored a 94. Had that sort of look of him about with an aim on, alongside an aim on. So he took a bit of points off him. Don't think he took any kick-ins. I didn't actually look at the ranks, but definitely a set to jump up in price, assuming that he can back it up again this week. I'm in the boat that I want to I think I want to see it one more week just to make sure. But yeah, definitely one you can jump on, as he's sort of that sweet price at this point where you can jump up from a Caulfield to him, or even a Reed that has just got injured to fill that D sort of 7 spot, or push down others down to that D7 spot and be a fieldable option for us. So definitely one to jump onto if you need to. Riley Bonner should be number 1 in my opinion. I think he's absolutely forced a hand at this point. Scoring the 102, only priced at 501k. I know there's a bit of concern with Sinclair coming back in, but I've actually know what the teams have been announced, and Brad Crouch has been dropped from the team, so it's definitely 100% likely that Sinclair is going to play 100% midfield time, so I'm not too concerned about his role at all, and yeah, he's going to make a bulk of cash very quickly, especially with his run coming up. It's definitely pretty juicy, so definitely one I'd be jumping on if you don't have him already. Dempsey is the rookie to probably grab for the week alongside with Sharp. If I had to choose between a Dempsey or a Sharp, I'd probably go with a Sharp, as I think he's going to be a bit more consistent for us. Plays a better role on the wing, whereas Dempsey's more of a forward or half forward. So don't see him kicking 3 goals every week. So he could definitely drop down back to a 40 or a 50 this week if he doesn't go off and kick 3 goals again. So, but he's going to make a lot of cash, so he's definitely one to pick up if you think he's going to continue his scoring potential. I am also looking at him in my trading plans. Jack Billings, he's an awkward one for me because he did make his break even of 140 and absolutely had the best game of his life. But I'm in the opinion of that I can give it one more week, just so let that break even get a little bit lower. He's not going to have a 140 game again next week, but if he can put up a solid sort of 80, I reckon, then definitely can be one that I will jump on next week, and he'll only be he'll still be below 600k, so definitely one that you could jump on again. But yeah, if you're super keen, the only thing that scares me is his early round bye, in my opinion, just because you're only going to do a handful of games, and it's actually quite a hard run when you look at it as a midfielder. I think, actually, I'll put it up here. He's a wing defender. Oh, as a quick note, if you haven't seen this before, this is the DFS Australia website. You can see the matchups solo for you can see the toughness of the matchups for the coming week. Just in this rubric here. So if we look at Melbourne as a wing defender, he's got Hawthorn. That's a bit annoying that it does that. Hawthorn, which is a bit of a neutral matchup. Then he's got Port, Adelaide, and Brisbane before his bye. So definitely could be a few games that he struggles in. So don't know if he's super on my calculations at this point, but if he has another mega game next week, then maybe he forces a hand. But 15 marks is definitely not sustainable. Caleb Sarong, I can see why people are doing it, but I'm not a huge fan of it. Just because he is over $1 million at this point, and he won't be at his top peak of his powers. Obviously, he's going to make a bit more coin definitely after this round playing North Melbourne. But it seems a bit early for me to be jumping on these top 8 or 6 guys. It's and paying up that much for them. I think we're in the stage of the season where you want to just get a bunch of cash, and really develop your side as a whole, and generate that team value up. And he's not going to do that. He's not, he's at where he should probably be priced at by the end of the season, and you're not going to be trading him out. So definitely a good captain option if you want to trade him in. Has definitely worked in the past. I traded in a Tom Green last year in round 1, but there was a bit of difference there. Was that he was priced at only 800k, while the top premiums were priced at $1 million. So he was very underpriced, whereas Caleb Strong really isn't. Jeremy Clark, I already spoke about him. Matt Crouch. Now, I've got a bit of a mixed opinion about Max Crouch because I struggled to take anything into opinion about this game because it was so horrible. It really worked into his favour, where he really likes that quick disposal out and gets a couple of tackles here and there. When it comes to maybe a faster game style, I don't know if he's going to get nearly as much of the ball. And yeah, definitely won't do 113. Maybe could do a 90 to 95, but yeah, it would be tough. Definitely not where I'm looking at this point in time, especially with their run being quite a lot more difficult. I can probably bring that up for you as well. It's just neutral on here, but in my calculations it's a bit harder. Anyways, alright, moving on. Heaney, I've been just tossing up between this one because it's a bit tough because he does have that early buy, but I do think these next 3 matches could really hurt you if you don't have him and he continues to scoring at this potential. So yeah, if you don't have him, maybe just jump on to reduce that hurt, because he is getting bits up there now in ownership, so could definitely hurt you. Blake Howes, absolutely get him in if you don't have him. Obviously, a few injuries happened in the back line. He's an obvious one to get in. He's making a bunch of cash, so absolutely lock him in. Nat Fyfe really looked good on the weekend again. Scored the 86. Played the full midfield time. Actually had a lot of high time on ground, which was a bit surprising. Had the tackles, which is what we love to see. Had a few marks as well. Would have liked to see a bit more kicks than handballs, but we take it as we get it. Even had a shot goal, which was pleasing to see. So, definitely jump on board. He's going to make a bit of cash coming up if you don't have him already, especially with the likes of Cam McKenzie and Sardis sort of being failed picks at this point in time. How many more will we do here? We've got a fair few more. Okay, Mighty Haw. I'm in the opinion that he's more of a key defender, so I'm not super keen at this point in time. I know he's probably going to make a bit of cash, but there's no reason why he could easily drop a 40 this week because he's playing more of an accountable role alongside May and Lever. So it's one I'm avoiding at this point in time. He's very fringe in that team. Only came in, I think, because someone got injured. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, definitely it's one to watch if he continue that scoring rate. Perkins, I don't think it's an option in my opinion, just because there is Parrish coming back. He is the one that will more than likely be kicked out of the CBAs. I don't see Merritt going anywhere, and they do like to have Setterfield in there to have that bigger body. So if, maybe they get rotated a little bit more, that's maybe a possibility, but he definitely won't have this mega CBA role that he played on the weekend where he was the number 1 guy. So not one I'm considering. Where are we at? Charlie Dan, you can see that. I think a lot of people are jumping on him because he was going to make a bit of cash, having that break even of 4. But as you can see, he's got a red dot next to his name now because he's been dropped by Collingwood. So not an option anymore, and get him out of your team. Harry Sheezel, I can see why people are doing it. He is taking it to another level this year. Scored the 120 off the bat this last week. Got a decent low break even, and maybe there's a few other players that are just wanting to jump off and you can get onto him. So yeah, definitely one. He's going to be top 6. If you can get to him, then absolutely do it. He's underpriced, so good trade him. Toby Pink, sorry. Only scored the 32, so I wouldn't be jumping on. I know we're having a bit of a rookie crisis down back, but he's not going to make us a huge amount of coins, so I wouldn't be jumping on. Very similar with Euland. 30, what did he score? 41, average of 33, so he's not going to make a huge amount of cash either. Could have a day out against Western Bulldogs, but I think we can wait a week. He's not urgent to trade in at this point in time. Kobe, yeah, absolutely get him in. If you didn't start him, need to have him in your team. He's going to be one of the best rookies we have of the year. Max Gawn is an interesting one. I'm in the opinion, if you started with a Grundy and Cherry, absolutely you can go from Grundy to Gawn, because I consider that an upgrade. Gawn is going to be much closer to being that top line of a ruckman than the other two in a Cherry and a Grundy. So I consider it an upgrade. It's not a huge amount of cash to jump from there, so you could definitely do that in my opinion. That's definitely the way to go if you can facilitate that move. Tom Green, I know he absolutely killed it last week, and he's got West Coast again this week, but he's got the bye next week. Yeah, I don't know if I can facilitate you to do that. I personally won't do it. I'm not considering it. I know he absolutely killed it, and he's going to be a good captain option again this week. But yeah, he's just I don't know why you'd want to do it when you only get one more game out of him, and then you got to put him on his bench. So could definitely jump onto him when he is after his bye. But he's going to be very pricey. I do understand why. He is over $1 million now. Don't expect him to average 130 for the year. He probably dropped back to the one sort of 115 area for the season when he comes up against harder opponents. A couple more here. I'll probably just talk about Rao. I know he is also averaging 113. Had the 115 on the weekend and had the 112 the week before. It does seem to be taken to a new level, but again, I don't know if I can consider this game too much. Did have the 10 tackles, which isn't sustainable, but did have a promising sort of 29 disposals, so I probably want to wait for one more week for that, because his break-even is still quite high, and does have the bye coming up next week. Last one probably will be Whitfield. Yeah, I can see why people are jumping on. Again, he has West Coast. Is he underpriced? Probably not. Now, I think he's sort of got to that sort of price where he's going to average for the year. So I probably wouldn't be jumping on him either. Very similar, just has the early buy next week. So wouldn't jump on him at this stage. Alright, let's move away from this. That's probably all the guys I want to really talk about for this week. There's not really anyone else I really want to talk about there. A lot of different people. So what am I doing this week? So here's my team. Not much has changed. I'll just zoom out for you guys so you can see it a bit better. If I flip this over, like I showed you in the last video, that's not what I want to do. Sorry. Let's go to this. All I'm looking at here is the red and green, right? So a few bits of red and a lot of green. So Newcomb is the obvious choice for me. He lost 25k and is going to lose a bunch more cash if he has a poor game next week, which he does have a tougher matchup in Melbourne. So definitely one I want to be moving on. So he is the obvious choice. The obvious choice I think he goes to is Bonner for me. So if I throw that in there, that leaves me 343k in the bank to do something else. So I'm tossing up between a couple different options here. It could either be, okay, Clark is named a sub, and then I can easily go to a Dempsey. No, he's not a midfielder, that's right. Dempsey. And that leaves me with 284k for next week if I want to do an upgrade of some sort, or want to grab another player. So, which isn't a bad thing. Like, it probably is a little bit more cash than what I would typically like, but in this instance, I'm making a lot of cash still, and that money can be put towards a good upgrade next week, so that's one option I'm looking at. Another option is, instead of going Jai, I could then get rid of this red dot on my bench, and I could go with a Massimo D'Ambrosio. spends up a little bit. And the only thing I don't like about this sort of trade is that when it comes to round 4, when we are playing best 22 again, I'm going to have 7 defenders that are typically should be on my field. I'd be then pushing Howes and Caulfield back onto my bench, and then I'd be fielding Williams and a D'Ambrosio. So it's spending a little bit more on my bench, which I'm not a huge fan of. In saying that, I could also make plans to trade out a Caulfield next week if he does poor, but every chance that he could come out and play quite well this week. But it's definitely one thing I'm considering, as I do want to move on Reed eventually, so that spot can generate cash, and Massimo Dempsey is definitely going to do that. It's just sort of weighing up, is Dempsey or Massimo going to make more coin? And I think you could pretty much argue that Dempsey is going to make more cash, being a lower priced rookie. And the last one, also very similar, but probably my least favourite, is moving on Caulfield. I don't think he's a huge priority, but yeah, definitely could be very similar and do that. But no, I definitely think I'll be getting Dempsey in as well. What was I doing? Just because I think Clark is going to be named as a sub, and he's going to drop all his cash, very similar to Reed. Then getting, where is he? Dempsey in. Alright, let's just confirm that. So that's sort of what I'm looking at this week, and we'll go back to my team, and that's what it will sort of look like going into the round. Now, previewing this round, I wanted to talk about what sort of captains are going to be good this week. Obviously, I did the Merritt into Gaunt last week, worked out really well for me, scored the 125, and then Gaunt scored the 137. Unfortunately, took the Merritt's 125 before I got the Gaunt, but I thought I'd touch on who I think are going to be good. So let's just quickly go through the fixture here. So St Kilda v Collingwood. I think Dacos is going to be quite a good option here if you started him. Definitely a good VC option. We know St Kilda give up a fair few points to midfielders and defenders, so he is pretty much both of those and could have a big game here, and is definitely one that I am worried about. Next game, I'm not too concerned here. This is probably a very even game, so if you wanted to throw it on a Dawson or a Laird, if you started them, definitely go ahead. Probably wouldn't throw it on anyone here from the Cats. North Melbourne, Fremantle. Obviously, North Melbourne give up a lot of points to pretty much every position possible. So if you have a Caleb Sarong or a Brayshaw or even a Young, obviously caveat to that is watch out for team announcements and we'll look out for where he's going to be playing. Obviously, he moved back in the final quarter last week, and there is talks that he could move back to help out that defensive line that has been struck by injuries. But yeah, definitely Sarong and Brayshaw could be a good option here. And on the flip side, I think Sheasel could also be a decent option as a VC, or even if you want to throw the C on him. He scored the 127 last year against Fremantle, and it's at Marvel. I think the weather's looking pretty good. If not, I'm sure the roof will be closed anyway. So yeah, I think he'll rack it up back there. We saw Fremantle give up a lot of points in general last week against Brisbane. I think it was probably one of the highest scoring games that we saw, so definitely could be one that could jump on. Next game, Hawks v Melbourne. Only really one I'd really consider is probably a Petrarca, but you could definitely do a Gorn as well. Reeves typically has been a bit more restrictive last year, but was really poor last week, so probably not my favourite pick to do, but knowing Gorn, he could easily put out a 110, no worries. Next game, Swans v Essendon. I do really like Heaney in this game. Essendon do give up a fair bit of points to midfielders, and Heaney is that at the moment, so he's going at quite a good rate, so just need to watch out if he gets attention, which I doubt it. And then on the flip side, Merritt, we know what Merritt does. He's a very good easy captain to just go 110 each week pretty much. Next game, I'd probably just be looking at Bonts. I know he had a poor game last week, but expecting to bounce back. It's not probably my favourite matchup, as Suns are a bit tougher at the moment with how they are looking, but yeah, you'd back in Bont, being, you've paid up for him, you might as well throw the C on him if you can. Richmond and Port Adelaide. You'd think Port Adelaide are probably going to take most of the points, so definitely a Rosie could be a good option. Probably wouldn't consider too much from Richmond. Moving on to the final game, there's a couple here as well. Tom Green definitely probably be one of the top picks for the week, and I probably could also say Whitfield as well. I think he could rack it up in this sort of game style where, they could get way out in front and then they could just start chipping the ball around, and Whitfield is that guy. So definitely one to consider. So if I had to give my top 5, I'd probably say going Sarong against North Melbourne is probably number 1. I'd then probably go Green against West Coast. I'd probably then go Dacos against St Kilda. I think he could do really well. And then I'd go probably a Heaney and a Sheasel there. So that's just my thoughts for the captain options. Alright, we've been going for 40 minutes already. I didn't want to do this for too long, but there was one more thing I wanted to discuss this week, which if you didn't stay this long to the video, you might miss out on this one, but I wanted to talk about sort of a rolling 22. I won't call it the rolling 22, obviously that's the traders thing, but I wanted to talk about what my best 22 for the year is going to be. I think it's a good thing to start thinking about this, because at the end of the day, these are the guys that you should be targeting to get in your team at some stage, especially, when we start to hit upgrade season in a couple, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. You should really start factoring when you got to grab these guys, who's at a good price right now that you could actually jump to in a couple of weeks' time. So best 22, my defenders is, number 1 is Dacos. I think it's pretty straightforward. And alongside him is Sheasel. So that's my clear number 1 and 2. My third is I've gone Luke Ryan. I think with Freo maybe being a bit poorer this year. Oh no, they haven't shown that, but I expect them to be a bit poorer this week. That the ball could be in the back line a bit more. And with a few of their injuries, he's just going to rack it up back there. He does what he normally does. He could score a 130 and then have a 70 next week, but overall he's probably going to average in the hundreds and be quite good. Number 4, I had Lockie Whitfield. He's just looking like that main distributor off halfback. Looks really fit, gets all the handball receives and gets those cheap 45 kicks, so he gets those +6s. I've thrown Sinclair in there at number 5 because he is meant to have a midfield role when he comes back, so we'll see on the weekend how he goes. I think he'll quite suit the fast game style of St Kilda, so I think he probably doesn't present value, but I still think he'll be the sort of top 6 and be number 5 for the season. And number 6 spot was a bit difficult for me, but I've thrown in Nick Newman with the Sam Doherty injury. I think he is going to rack it up back in that Carlton backline. So he will absolutely rack it up back there. We've seen it last year, so I wouldn't be surprised if he manages to break the even average over 110. So moving on to the midfield, probably where we're all trying to consider. It's a bit more tricky as we're trying to consider 8 people, but I've got Bont at number 1, Green number 2, Merritt number 3, and Sarong number 4. I don't think you can pretty argue any of them. I think they're all definitely going to average over 110 quite easily. If some of them probably even over 115, and I know 120s are probably very hard to predict, but I definitely could see either one of them averaging over 120 this season. So moving on to number 5, I've thrown in Oliver in there. He's a bit of out of flavour at Melbourne, but I still see him being a top 8 midfielder throughout the season. At some stage, we're going to have to get him in. I know he is super. I should be showing you this, I think, but what is he priced at currently? I think he's pretty expensive. Yeah, so he is below $1 million, but he is scoring at 114, and he actually has a very low time on ground last week, which is quite scary to think. So I definitely think he could jump up into that consideration. Number 6, I had Errol Goulden. We've seen what he's done. I know he's had a poorer start to the year, which we are all aware of, but this high time on ground, his ethic and what he can distribute is ridiculous, and he would definitely be part of that top 8 in my opinion. These last 2 spots are a little bit difficult for me, just because I'm a bit unsure. But I've thrown in Dawson in there. Oops, Dawson, if I can spell. As long as he has that main midfielder role, I still see him being that sort of 110 guy, which he was last year, and be clear top 8. It's just making sure, he's going to lose a bit of cash for us, which is nice, and we're going to be able to pick him up a bit cheaper. So definitely keep that on your radar and look for a good fixture when to pick him up, even if he is still losing cash. And last one I had was Connor Rosie. He is looking really good. I know he's only played the one game and it was against West Coast, but the team was really looking for him on those cheap 45s. Obviously, being the new captain of the club, he was looking elite, and I think he can push that to top 8 this year for sure. Moving on to the ruckman, I think this is pretty straightforward in my opinion. Obviously, you have Rowan Marshall in English. I'd probably have Rowan Marshall above English, just because I think Rowan Marshall has another gear to go, where I think we saw the best of English last year. So we saw what Rowan Marshall did at the end of last season, where he just kept, I think he was averaging over 130 for maybe 4 or 5 games. So that's just the way I see it, and you definitely want to get them in your side at some stage. Just need to identify when they've sort of dropped in price, if they've jumped in price. So moving on to the forwards, this one's a bit trickier, as there's some really unique names in there which I'm not super confident in, but these first 2 guys I think are pretty obvious. I've gone Heaney at number 1. This is assuming that he's going to keep this midfield role throughout the season. Even if he doesn't keep it fully, I think he'll still maybe have like 30% CBAs and still be able to distribute, closer to 80 to 90, which should be enough to be in the top 6 anyways, I'd imagine. So definitely one I'm considering holding post his buy for sure. Number 2, I had Sam Flanders. I know he had a poor start 92 is not poor, but in the preseason we all jumped off because of a poorer game. But yeah, he's definitely shown in these 2 games that he still has the potential to score quite well. And these are actually quite low numbers for him, I thought. 4 marks. He's usually a bit higher than that, I thought, especially in the back end of last year. So he's a clear number 2 for me. Next one I've got is Dan Zorko. Which is a weird pick, obviously. He is averaging the 102 currently. Scored really well in the last 2 games. He's playing a really odd game style for me, where he's having maybe 1 or 2 CBAs a quarter, and I think mainly playing as a half forward. But he just seems to be grabbing so much of the ball. He works so hard to get that spread of marks a bit on the wing, and he gets quite a few tackles. So if he can keep fit and healthy, which we know is quite unlikely, he's definitely in the top considerations. But at this point in time, he's number 3 for me. Next one is Dylan Moore. We've seen what he's done in the past. Even when he's come back from glandular fever over the summer, he's just knocked out a 92 that quickly. He's scored the 3 goals, which it won't happen all the time, but he works so hard. He gets the marks out on the wing quite often, gets quite a few free kicks because he is smaller and a small forward, does work hard to get tackles as well, and can really rack it up. So he's number 4 for me. These next 2 are probably where it gets a bit touch and go, as I've probably missed a lot of other guys, but this is just how highly I rate what their potential is. So I've gone Rankin at number 2. I don't even know where he is. I'll have to type him up, I reckon. Yeah, Isaac Rankin. So he's had a bit of a shuffle over the season, where he's going to get a lot more midfield time, and I reckon he's going to push this closer to 90. And for those that started him, absolutely great. I think he was a good option. I just wasn't willing to do it with their fixture. High time on ground, going to have a few shots at goals each week. Runs through the midfield at like 30%, tackles quite well. He's going to get a few more marks in this. Obviously, this game was a bit of a a very sloppy game, as I've said multiple times in this video. But yeah, I definitely see him pushing into the 90s and can be clear top 6 in this line, and we may need to get him at some stage. Last one, people probably not like me for, but I think it's Zach Fisher. I still think he has the potential to go 80 to 90 in that role. We know what the North Melbourne defence line is like. Once they start to get beaten a little bit more, they will start to chip it around quite quickly, and he will absolutely rack it up there. So I'm definitely not jumping off, and that concedes my best 22. Alrighty guys, so hopefully that gave you some information about what I'm looking at. Another sort of tip I wanted to throw here at the end is that when you're planning your trades, always look at what you're doing next week as well, right? So even though these are my trades for this week, what am I using that remaining cash for next week? So I'm looking at, okay, who went well this week that I could maybe grab next week? So that could maybe be, a Max Holmes. Oh, God damn it, I like to have that for Max Holmes. He's high on my list. If he goes really well, then I could be jumping on him next week. His break even will be low enough that I can easily jump on and get some cash rise. Whereas this week, it's not quite low enough that if I jump on, it's not going to hurt me, or it's not going to really gain me as much. Another one is a Billings. If he absolutely kills it this week, then absolutely I could jump on and he will have a super low break even, and I could use that cash to jump up from, someone who that has maybe not performed as well, who maybe, I could do a bit of a restructure possibly and go get a Caulfield off if he does a bit worse, maybe even a Yo. Pretty happy with most of the midfield. Don't think I'm ready to jump off any of the rookies yet. Similar with the rucks. If Grundy does do quite badly again next week, then I'll have to consider it. But I don't. I like his run coming up, so I'll back him in. If Fisher does do quite badly, yes, he can probably go and I can pick him up at another stage. And probably don't want to move on these three and the rookies at any stage. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say. That always look at what your trades are for next week as well. So it's what I used a lot last season, and it's what really helped me. Even putting in some figures about, okay, yes, Billings is at 538k now, but he's going to have a price jump from then. If he absolutely kills it and wants to join my team, he may jump up to 590. Okay, let's throw in the 590 price tag into what I'm expecting, and allow for a rookie upgrade. So, okay, let's spend 300k on a rookie. That sort of shows me how much money I need to jump to this guy and who I can consider. So that's just my thoughts and a little tip for you guys. What is some of my philosophies going through these trade seasons? So, but that's all I had for today, guys. Hopefully you liked this video. Hopefully, it definitely went too long. Not all these videos are going to be this long. I promise you. Hopefully they'll be cut back to 25 minutes, if they're 30 minutes max next week. But yeah, that's it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed. Please subscribe and leave a thumbs up on the video. Throw any questions you have at me in the comment section. I'm pretty good at responding to a lot of those questions on there. So happy to help you guys out there. But besides that, hope you have a good week. Hopefully your picks all absolutely smash it this week and you can jump up in the ranks as I'm hoping to do as well. Alright guys, have a good one. Bye.